Hey, welcome back. Another episode of Walk-ins Welcome. As always, we're here to help you get more patients, deliver better care, get repeat visits, and scale your clinics. But you can't do any one of those four things, Michael, if you never launch in the first place.
Exactly. We actually have a wonderful guest on today. Before I get into the basic intro, Nick and I have been flying for a minute.
Yeah, we've been getting around town.
So we were actually in Missouri the other day, which was really awesome for a mastermind. I got to go to my first Cardinals game, which was super cool. Yeah, it's a beautiful stadium. But anyway, so I want to bring on our guest today. I think a lot of you will know this name. So Alan Ayers. All right. So Alan Ayers, he's the president of Urgent Care Consultants and the senior editor at the Journal of Urgent Care Medicine. But the reality of it is he's been in this space for 20 plus years. He's seen the highs, the lows, the everything in between. And he has a huge passion of getting those urgent care started, launching them, growing them, scaling them. So we're all friends in this realm right now. I'm excited to have you on, Alan.
Yes, Alan, thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Say hello to the walk-ins. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Say hello to the audience and tell us one thing about you that nobody else knows.
One interesting point. I am a commercial pilot. I have not flown in years because I think it's something you either do all the time or don't do it all. But at one point before 9/11, I aspired to perhaps have a career doing that, and so I went through, got my private license, loved it, and then my family basically said, "Okay, well, if you're going to keep doing this, you better get your instrument," and went through the commercial and then pretty much hung it up after that. So, but the license does not expire.
Nope, the license doesn't. The currency does.
Yeah, exactly. In the medical.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, all the medicals and everything. I'm 3 check boxes away from having my commercial, but I'm going to pause for a minute. I just got my instrument. So
that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. We're going to have to...
I'll go ahead and leave the room and I'll let y'all have a pilot conversation.
Didn't see that coming. So Alan also is a fellow pilot who just needs to get his currency done. Do you have a favorite plane to fly?
So it was most of my hours were on the Cessna 152, 172.
Okay. Yep. You couldn't put me in a 152 if you tried. You don't get in a 152. You strap it on.
I might be dating myself a little bit, but some of the planes that I look back that I built towers on, I'm not sure. Like Piper Tomahawk.
Oh yeah, you're right. No, I love it, man. So, well, let's get this podcast off the ground and flying.
There we go. We're gonna have pilot puns the whole way through.
The whole way through. If I can help it, we'll land this podcast episode at some point. But
don't forget the landing gear.
That's right, Alan. I want to hear your story. So before we get into questioning and helping these clinics launch. Let's hear your background. You've been 20 years of experience in the industry. You've got some stories to tell, but something got you there. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, it's really hard to believe that it's been that long. But I've pretty much seen the entire life cycle of the industry, which I think is really unusual in a career. But when I first got into urgent care, there were only about 1,200 centers. Today, the number's over 14,000. Yeah. And the story of how that occurred, years ago, I worked in consulting, worked for Anderson Consulting, which became Accenture. So doing kind of like Big Four consulting. Then 9/11 happened. The whole, after riding the consulting waves of like Y2K and the dot-com boom and the whole transition from mainframe to client server, then 9/11 happened, consulting kind of slowed. So I took that opportunity to go back to graduate school. And kind of looking forward, a lot of my emphasis in the consulting industry was around retail, and specifically big box retailers, Walmart, Home Depot, and suppliers who sold into those retailers. Well, if you kind of looked forward, and what actually ended up happening is retail kind of hit a maturity, and retail in the United States is now on a decline. So coming out of graduate school, we really, I identified healthcare as being the next growth frontier and healthcare being the next retail frontier. So this idea that we could combine retail and healthcare through one of my professors, one of my mentors, I helped him co-author a book coming coming out of graduate school. It was entitled Consumer Driven Healthcare. I think that may still be on Amazon. It's been a while. But then with that, I had the opportunity locally. I'm outside Columbus, Ohio. I've lived other places, but went to Ohio State and took over 7 urgent care centers coming in as COO that were really 2 pioneers in urgent care. These were kind of early movers. And at that time, if you had 7 centers, that was considered a large platform. I mean, we were talking to people, with 12, 18 centers. It's like, wow, how'd they build that? So really early in the industry, but coming in and being green to healthcare, I started asking the question, well, who does this well? And so I started looking across the country at these early urgent care pioneers, many of whom, built their businesses, got private equity, and have long kind of cashed out. But the founders of what became some of the largest urgent care platforms in the country, getting to know them early on. Well, at that time, we really weren't considered competitors. This was around 2006. Private equity didn't even, come into the fold until 2011, and really, didn't take off for a couple of years after that. So so somewhat in lockstep, in every city of any, probably every city with a population over 300,000 people had some urgent care operation. Some had 3 centers, some had 5 centers. We had 7 centers that were pretty much doing the same things in lockstep, but completely independently of one another. And so these folks were really open to me. I got to know them. I went to the second meeting ever of UCA, the Urgent Care Association, served their board of directors for 8 years. Actually, I planned those meetings. So I was responsible for developing the practice management content for the first 8 years as that organization scaled. It turned out that I could write, and a lot of people in the industry didn't have the writing skills. So I started from the first issue ever of the Journal of Urgent Care, have contributed that. It's now, over the course of years, it's several hundred articles, all of which are referenced on my website, AlanAyers.urgentcare.com, just to put a plug out there for that.
I love that.
Yeah, check it out. Yeah, it's not made to be pretty, but it has any topic on urgent care. It has the links to the articles that I've written over that time. And by the way, I'm finding that my own stuff is turning up a lot in AI because I built that knowledge base. So, but yeah, I've participated in the entire growth of the industry. I've been a COO, I've been a CEO, so I've run all aspects of operations within the 4 walls. For 8 years, I was with Concentra. So we sold the practices in Ohio. The hospital partner bought those out. I think, again, those guys, those ER docs were a little bit ahead of their time. Sold the urgent cares, went to Concentra. My first role there was to implement urgent care services in 300 occupational medicine clinics. That role progressed to corporate development. So I got involved with M&A. I basically controlled the real estate. So all the site selection, decisions around de novos, major renovations, closures, divestitures, was involved with all of that. For 5 of those years, Concentra was owned by Humana. So part of my role in business development was also to educate and spur utilization of urgent care among the health plan members. So really got the payer perspective being part of Humana. Then Humana sold Concentra, saw that as an opportunity to join Practice Velocity, which is now Experity, and have held a number of different roles there. At one point, we had brick and mortar centers. So I was CEO, built a platform of urgent cares in Virginia from 7 to 15 centers. And then for the last couple years, with Urgent Care Consultants, which is a partnership with Experity, have been involved with helping startups and helping existing clients, figure out how to grow and improve their business. So I would say it's really having participated in almost the entire life cycle of the industry. I just have this deep passion for it, and I really, I feel very lucky in my career. As I said, prior to that, you kind of bounce around from this to that and the other, and but to really be focused on one single thing, which is basically all things urgent care.
Man, that's a storied history.
I'm about to say, I think you're a founding father.
Yeah.
Is what this is.
At this point, yeah, it's there's some point where you traverse from being new and green, and you haven't been in urgent care long, to then you're just part of the woodwork.
We're gonna name you Dr. Urgent Care.
Yeah.
That's gonna be your new name.
It
That or
is.
Mr. Urgent Care. Well, so let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the startup. Okay. It's one thing to take, a practice to one location to 2, 3, 4, 10, 12, 15. But there's that first practice, getting your practice open, all the things that come along with it. Let's do a spitfire session. Just tell me, like, rattle off the 20 things that you have to do to get started, and then we'll dig into each one of those. Well,
yeah, well, maybe 1 through 15 would be location. Location. Can't emphasize getting the right location a lot, and we can dive into that in a little more detail. Having contracts, so understanding whether they're closed networks, the availability of insurance contracts, what those insurance contracts are going to pay. Like it or not, urgent care is an insurance-driven business.
Yes.
We've seen very few cash models succeed. I would say then with that, once you understand your reimbursement, having an urgent care service mix, so practicing urgent care medicine. We talk to a lot of ER docs that say, well, in the ER, we did this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're not being paid like the ER. Right. So, really understanding that urgent care medicine is about throughput, efficiency, speed, and it's really an 80-20 rule as far as what urgent care diagnoses and treats. After that, a big piece is marketing. If you, it's like the tree that falls and no one's there to see it. Does it make a noise? Well, you open an urgent care and you don't market it. Does it make any difference for the community? So, hitting the ground running with a full throttle marketing plan. And then beyond that, just delivering good service, delivering what patients expect for urgent care. So building a culture of teamwork, a culture of patient service and experience, and delivering the things that are important to patients. So I would say that's the basic formula for startups. And but the number one thing is just starting, like any business, starting with demand, starting with location. Can't really emphasize that enough.
So most clinics, incredible information, by the way, most clinics are probably going to want to open in the community that they live in, right?
Yes.
But that's not always the best way to start. So you just said start with where the demand is at. How do you research that on the front end?
Yeah, so we've really invested in analytics. Coming from the retail world, we've tied into looking at urgent care as a retail model, and so we have software. It's called a geospatial platform, but we subscribe to services which would actually be the same type of site selection software that a convenience store chain like Sheetz or Wawa, Quick Trip, whatever area of the country you're in, or Raising Cane's or Chick-fil-A would use. So, starting analytically, I like to describe it as a top-down approach. We have some clients come to us and say, well, what about this site? What about that site? Well, the problem starting with specific sites is it's kind of like just throwing something against the wall until the first thing that sticks. And so, literally when we see that, they're like, what about this? What about that? We land on the first one that's just good enough. It's like, well, I guess that'll work. By taking a top-down approach, we will look at a geography, and depending on how that geography is defined, is it a county, is it a mile radius, and that would really depend on the geography, the location. But taking this top-down approach, we first identify what I call the holes in the Swiss cheese. And so even, the suburban markets are saturated. There's a lot of opportunity in rural areas. And that, we'll kind of get to your question about building where you want to live versus building where you can be most successful. But identifying what are the opportunity zones. So if you have a trade area and the trade area is an F, it doesn't matter how good a location you have. It's either oversaturated, poor demographics, poor payer mix, and or insufficient population. There may be some other area. So we're really looking for the areas that show the greatest opportunity. Now, just because an area shows opportunity doesn't necessarily mean that real estate exists. And so that's part of our challenge being brick and mortar is, we need an A or a B location. If you're the only game in town, like if you have an A trade area and your site's an F, you're not going to be successful. If you have an A trade area and you're the only game in town, you might get by with a C, but then you're going to be vulnerable when the A or B kind of displaces you. And so, looking within these opportunity areas, we find the best real estate, and we have broker partners that we work with that will run the CoStar, which is kind of like the MLS for multiple listing service for commercial. We'll find these spots. We have a scorecard approach based on what we know drives visits to urgent care, and it's all very data driven. Being tied into Experity, we have EMR data, for about 40% of the urgent cares in the country. We have predictive performance models, so we can say, based on the performance of 3,000 or 4,000 other urgent cares, this urgent care should see so many visits per day. And so then with that, it's basically finding the best site in the best trade area that meets the threshold and according to the algorithm, would show the highest opportunity for success. So we're very methodical, and again, by going top down, that also assures that you've covered all bases versus just throwing things against the wall to take the first thing that sticks. So that's pretty much our approach to location, and then and everything really kind of flows from there. You start with the site.
Right.
And I love how it's data driven, where let's not just guess. Let's not just say this feels like the right spot. Like, no, here's some real data we can present you. And the fact that, you're tied to Experity, so you can say, well, we have 40% of the urgent cares in this country. So let the data just tell you where to go.
Yes.
I mean, at that point, when you're at 40%, that means one of every 2 or 3 urgent cares Experity is in there.
Right.
And so they're going to obviously know, like, that's a really hot location. That's oversaturated. We got too many over there. It's just an easy, because at the end of the day, because once someone signs a lease on a location, they're stuck. Like, they're not going anywhere, and it could ruin them. What we notice really well with urgent cares, like, a location can destroy you if you're not overly aggressive on your marketing to get people to find it, because then you lose all that foot traffic and actual car traffic and all the things. It's a crucial first step. Step 1 is I'm going to do this. Step 2 is I need to find the real location that's going to actually help me here, not harm me. Yeah.
And I would say a common mistake is focusing on rent. So they'll say, well, this place is $10 a square foot less than this, and in order to save money. But real estate, like so many things, it's a spot market, and that's a challenge. What is available today may or may not be different than what's available tomorrow. We may pick the best location that's available today before that new strip got built down the street, or before the new Walmart went up. But looking at what's available today, generally supply and demand, a more desirable space is going to have greater demand, and the landlord can be more confident in asking for higher rent and higher terms. If it's somewhere that's been vacant for 3 years, and the landlord may be willing to make a deal, but you kind of get what you pay for. And we've actually tied these attributes to visits per day. So we know that a standalone building will drive 10 more visits per day than being in a strip. And that kind of goes to the scorecard approach. So I was at a conference, somebody wanted to show me, they said, oh, I picked the site. What do you think? And I said, well, you want my honest opinion? It's a C. It's average. And, when I say ABC, we do a true bell curve. We don't have great inflation. So C is truly average. So what you think will do really well here? And I said, no, you'll do mediocre because it's average. And, then I showed him on the map. I said, okay, where you're positioned, that's a C. If you were over here where the Jimmy John's is, that would be the B. If you're out here where the Starbucks is, that would be your A. And so, we're able to actually tie specific site attributes to actual performance. Now, it still means they need to execute. You can have a location and it's short staffed and long wait times and bad reviews, and the location will only help you to a point. But
what you're saying is an A location and a D delivery is not a good marriage.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So then, but you've made the real estate investment. And then what we would say, the economics of urgent care is it's a high fixed cost business, but rent's a pretty small percent of your total cost. So if you kind of break down rent per patient, it's not that big a delta, between paying, $30 a square and, $45 a square when you account for the incremental patients. And really, the biggest expense is labor. And so, with the economics of urgent care, those 10 additional patients that come in, only a very small part of that would go to cover the higher rent. Almost all of that's going to flow through to your bottom line. So with urgent care being a volume driven business, it's really key to understand that once you hit break even, almost every additional visit after that just goes straight to your profit. A very high margin, like 85-90% margin after you kind of hit that break-even threshold. So that's why
I wish our urgent care, like some of the urgent cares we talked to, thought in that way.
Well, what we need to do is just like pull that one clip out and just send it to every client that we have and every future client. Well, let's take this to the next level then, Alan, because we've talked about getting your contracts in place. We've talked about selecting the right real estate, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever. But then there's also the digital real estate. And that digital real estate location matters when it comes to Google. But let's just like give us that 30,000 foot view of marketing and how to attack that as a brand new clinic.
Yeah, so it's really, there are multiple tactics. And, we get asked, well, what's the silver bullet? Should I do this or this or this? And the answer is yes.
You do this and this and this.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. I would describe digital as jacks to open. That's air coverage. It's a necessity. Now, really dating myself, when I first got into urgent care, and I was involved with kind of making these decisions to cut the Yellow Pages advertising, but we had a 6-figure Yellow Page ad, and that was key to driving our business. The full page, full color, Ameritech Pages Plus ad. It was $100,000 a year, and and then shortly thereafter, saying, well, do we need that? We should really be investing in digital, online, and digital then was kind of positioned, I would say, from the standpoint that the phone book's obsolete. Google kind of functions as the phone book. Anything you need, you look in your phone, and particularly, Google local places my business, whatever they're calling it nowadays. But that coming up in Google organically is really key. That's jacks to open. There are decisions early on that can affect that, like naming is important.
Yes.
Yeah, hold on. Say that again for the people in the
back. Naming matters.
Yes, and we've actually even seen. There was a situation where the client had 2 businesses, and I think it really. And they wanted them branded together, so urgent care and this other business. And I really think it was to their detriment. I think it confused Google. I think Google might have questioned, like, well, what is this? And I think also it could confuse consumers. Well, is this, not a very good urgent care because it's part of something else, or is the other thing, lesser because it's part of an urgent care, so we'd say, well, separate those completely. Different branding, different websites, different online identities. So I would say definitely digital, jacks to open. There's so much that can be done, with digital nowadays too. And the great thing about digital, it's all measurable.
Right.
So, targeting patients, talking about the real estate piece, even, we use that. We use cell phone data to, look at, define what's the true trade area. If we're positioning near a chain, Kroger, Safeway, Albertsons grocery store, where is that store pulling from? It's highly unlikely it's very clean, concentric, circles, half mile, 3 mile, 5 mile circles. So, and then also understanding traffic patterns. If there's a competing urgent care, is it en route? Can we intercept patients? Where are people headed to and from? Well, that can also be used for marketing. So, for instance, I opened a center, and there was this was in in a southeastern state. There was a Harris Teeter supermarket. That's a Kroger nameplate, and so the ability to geofence people coming to that Harris Teeter, and then push digital marketing to people that we knew were going to that location on a regular basis. So so many things can be done with digital, and with that, so I'd say digital is really kind of jacks to open, but having a grand opening strategy. We see clinics that defer marketing, and then they wait several months into it. Key is you got to drive volume out of the gate. And so I would say the marketing, all tactics, direct mail, billboards if they're available, reaching out in the community events, school nurses. Not everything's going to be available to every clinic where you live. So it really does require a hyper local approach. But again, the key is to have a sufficient marketing budget out of the gate, hit it hard, hit it from from the time your doors open, because otherwise you're going to be catching up later on.
I love that you said a sufficient marketing budget. What would you consider that to be?
For a startup, I would say that, that could be around 50 grand, one time, expense. The maintenance as a percent of revenue, can really depend on, the market dynamics. If it's a competition, but, if it's in a rural area, and they're really the only game in town, there's still maintenance of that, so the ongoing marketing spend may become less about getting new patients through the door, but still maintaining that top of mind. So, part of urgent care marketing is, awareness of the urgent care. What does urgent care do? Oh, there's a new urgent care located near Kroger. I didn't know that. Now I know. But then some of it is, I woke up with a sore throat this morning. What should I do about that? And again, being top of mind. I had a good experience. I can go to urgent care. I know they can do a test. I can get out of there quickly. They take my insurance. But that message still needs to be constantly top of mind of the consumer. Yeah. So I would say marketing probably transitions from client patient acquisition to maintenance or maintaining the existing patient base. And we know when the marketing goes dark, the volumes fall. So it is essential.
Very good, Michael.
Well, yeah. So I was thinking through it. Let me ask you this question, because we're convinced that urgent cares, okay, so the typical patient ultimately doesn't care about the branding of an urgent care. Like, they're going to an urgent care. That's about as far as they don't even necessarily know which urgent care. They don't know which urgent care they're going to. They're just going. And so we make the joke that you're like, yes, you need a logo and all the things, but at the end of the day, as long as you're saying urgent care, people will identify that. And it's even the joke of, as long as your signage on your windows and on your building are red letter urgent care, you'll attract people into to your location to a degree. Is that like something that you find pretty common, like making sure that your visibility is strong from your location? It says urgent care, like the name of your business that should be something urgent care.
And I would, it's very naming's tricky, because you really kind of have to start with the URL. We do have clients that get creative with names. I keep a couple names in my pocket, that we think of, that I can offer. I own the URLs on those, but, just about every combination of care, well, here, now has been taken. And, so short of that, urgent care is kind of self-explanatory, that is what's important. And then as far as, so I would say, don't get overly elegant or creative in naming. If worst case, you just name it urgent care of, whatever the community is. But the other thing I would say about branding and kind of to your point is when I got started early in urgent care again, just trying to understand the market, understand consumer behavior. I've conducted consumer focus groups in various cities around the country. So we would bring people into a consumer market research facility, and it's really, if you've seen one, it's really pretty interesting. You have a glass wall, one-way glass, and you have a facilitator, and you have an audience, and some of them one of them was even kind of set up like movie theater seats. You're watching the fishbowl of the consumers that they brought in. But one of the activities they would do is they would put the names of local urgent cares on the wall. And some of them were independent, some of them were private equity backed, some of them were multi-location, some of them were hospitals. And we would ask questions, the facilitator would ask questions about these urgent cares. So, if this urgent care were a car, what kind of car would it be? If this urgent care were a friend, what adjectives would you use to describe them? Funny, fast, smart, etc. And what we found, with only a couple of exceptions, is that people could not differentiate these urgent care brands. And we had even people say, oh, I love the urgent care I go to. Well, what's it called? Oh, it's located at such and such. And
I know the street name, but I don't know the name.
Right.
Yeah. So with that really kind of hit me, because at that time, we were seeing large private equity investments in urgent care, and like retail is your brand. You could blindfold anybody and stick them in a Kohl's or a Target or a Walmart, take off the blindfold, say what store you're in, they tell you immediately. So that really to me kind of indicated a crisis of brand in urgent care. And then another situation that I had was when I was at Concentra, we had acquired the MedExpress centers in Denver. Well, MedExpress had acquired, I think it was the Accident and Injury Center, and then it became MedExpress, and then it became Concentra, and then the landlord pulled the lease out from under us. So we had to move. So in order to save the urgent care patients we acquired, we built a actually better location about a block away. And then another urgent care backfilled that same building. And I actually have a slide that I show that shows the same building with like 4 or 5 different signs. Well, what we found was people just continued to go to the same location, regardless of the name and ownership. And unless there was a reason for them not to go there, if they went and had a really negative experience, then they might be looking for something new. We found that people were really creatures of habit. And so that's significant, because if you're looking at a market and market saturation, if you add a service where it previously did not exist, your growth is somewhat organic. But if you come into a competitive market, your patients are going to have to come by taking those patients from others. And that, requires a completely different approach to marketing, service, branding, location, and everything else. So a great point about brand, and it is significant, but it is also less relevant in other contexts.
Wow.
Yeah. I love to hear that information, because it's real. Because the idea of, because we see it all the time in our ad space, where people are blind tapping and clicking. They don't really care who they're calling. They just have a problem. They need to get it fixed. And, oh yeah, you are pretty close to me, I'll come. But no, just the fact that you guys moved from a location and then people kept going back to the old location, and they thought they didn't know any different. That's right. They just think, so what I'm hearing, the strategy is actually you go find a really good urgent care that's independent, that's killing it. He's like, I'm going to give you an offer you can't refuse. and then just change one sign and then just pretend like nothing happened and take over the patients.
Yeah, exactly. And acquisition, that can be a way to acquire contracts. So we see some markets where it is difficult because of levels of saturation. Certain states, certain markets, certain payers are not giving new contracts to urgent care centers. So that may be a way to get in, acquire contracts. You're starting with X many visits per day. So when we do look at markets, we do look at existing urgent cares. But the one question, kind of back to the point about location, I would say, if it's an acquisition, would you open a new urgent care in this location? If the answer is no, then it's probably something you don't want to buy.
Right.
I can kind of talk about for what I see like the first generation issue in urgent care, and as the industry's matured, I do think as an industry we kind of face this situation. Where trade areas evolve. So I would say, near me, there are 3 Paneras that have closed because down the street, there are 3 brand new Paneras. Their lease expires and they say, hey, the retail traffic moved from here to here. That's the old supermarket. Everything's moving down, around the new Kroger marketplace. And, they pick up and move. Well, given that, yeah. So given the urgent care, this iteration of urgent care has been going on, 15, 20 years. They're typically 10-year leases with 5 years extension. We're running into, ER doc founded urgent cares were successful before the pandemic, were successful during the pandemic, and then kind of past the pandemic, their business has fallen off. Well, when we look, it's like, you probably need to move,
Time to move.
what was located then, but then they kind of look at, I'm sure, they might have been in their 40s or 50s when they opened the urgent care 20 years ago. They don't want to do this forever. They paid off their loan. It's fully depreciated. Do they really want to start over? And those are at risk of being displaced. So what was an A is now a C, and just give a great example. And I believe you're in Alabama, so these names would be relevant. But we were looking at a potential acquisition that was a former Blockbuster in front of the Winn-Dixie across the street from the Piggly Wiggly, and kind of the corner main of me.
That checks off so many Alabama names.
and I would say, when that was open, you couldn't have done better. Blockbusters were awesome urgent cares. They had big signs, big buildings were kind of large, but A+ location went open. But now you don't want to be there. You want to be 2 miles out by the highway where the brand new Walmart and the brand new Chick-fil-A and everything's kind of moving. That's where the growth is. There's nothing going on at this old intersection. If anything, the stores are picking up and moving from here to here.
It's sad when you say Piggly Wiggly, because most Piggly Wigglies in our area are in old locations that people don't care about, and like they've moved on, but the pig is still there. I was actually even at a little antique shop over this past weekend that used to be a Piggly Wiggly, and like it's a real thing. And then here in Alabama, at least, almost all of our Winn-Dixies are being converted to Aldis now. And so all our Winn-Dixies are going away. But you're right, Walmart and Chick-fil-A are like some key area. Like they have it figured out. I remember long ago, there's a sporting goods store here in Alabama called Hibbett's. And so you probably have heard of Hibbett's. Yeah. And so they're based out, I think they just sold actually a couple of years ago. Based out of Alabama, all the things. I'd gone to one of their marketing seminar things, and their retail strategy was, we go in the same strip mall as a Walmart. Because Walmart has a limited offer of sporting goods, and we can fill in all the gaps, and we'll let that traffic fix us. So like that was their entire model. And then, they kind of grew a little bit out of it. But even today, if you find a Hibbett's, it's usually in a strip mall attached to Walmart or across the street from Walmart.
Yeah, and that's where I would say you can kind of cheat a little bit. That if you see if you see Chick-fil-A, if you see Walmart, if you see Raising Cane's, whatever these popular new brands are, they didn't put that there for no reason. So they're running the same kind of analytics we are, and if you see those things around, that's probably a good indication that that's where you need to be. But it's still a matter of, getting the right space, the right visibility, the signage, the traffic, and it just reinforces, we talked about marketing earlier. It provides context. So, if you're running a digital campaign through streaming, and such and such urgent care, and it's hidden away in some office condo somewhere, no one knows what you're talking about, that's going to be far less effective than every several times a week when they're driving to Aldi, when they're driving to Starbucks, going taking the kids to Chick-fil-A, and they see that sign. It just reinforces, even if it's subliminal, they hear the ad through streaming media. Oh yes, that's that's the urgent care over here.
One of the ways we look at that is just trying to create omnipresence for the brands that we work with.
Yeah.
Because they may not need you right this minute, but when they do, and they remember your brand when they do that search, if there's 3 choices in that map 3-pack, they're going to pick the one that they connect with. And that's where the branding takes over. All right. So you've given us so much value so far. And what a great episode. I feel like we need to do another episode to catch up on everything we're going to miss, because I have to take us out. But I want to ask a question and wrap up. So you've helped launch and scale countless urgent cares over your 20-year career. I know that. What is the biggest difference between an urgent care launch that thrives and ones that struggle and close?
Yeah, so kind of getting past the basic, the foundational things that we mentioned, location, having sufficient working capital, offering services, contracts, that are in line with the reimbursement. So once you kind of get past those foundational things, it really kind of comes down to patient experience, and I've done studies. I actually looked at data in the Xperity EMR and looked at basically every field we could pull, and correlated that to net promoter score. Correlation's not causation. I get that, but really trying to determine what differences between these charts in aggregate would drive a higher net promoter score. And really what I found was patients expect 3 or 4 things from urgent care. So number one given is speed. They want to get in and out quickly. They want to have a lab test done, basically, solve their problem, which lab, test, and treat, that's a big part of urgent care. So lab test done, prescription, I would say prescription in hand, but the prescription, sent electronically to the pharmacy. So in and out quickly, diagnose and treat my issue, and not be rude. So that's almost a negative, like, and I would say the bar, for customer services, like saying don't be rude to the patients. It's like, you don't have to wow the patients if you can. That's just a really, a plus. So I would say centers that build the culture, have the team, get the right people to deliver consistently on that patient experience. That's what really assures long-term success and differentiates long-term success. I've been in clinics, and I'm thinking I wouldn't go for that. I'm not sure I would. I would like that. But with that, and what something that really interests me, Forbes puts out the top 100 customer service companies, that they rank every year. And, when looking at that, sure, yeah, if you pay money for a Ritz-Carlton and you get a Ritz-Carlton experience, congratulations, you got what you paid for. I mean, I don't really think that's remarkable. It'd probably be more remarkable if you paid for that experience and didn't get it. But really, the companies in the Forbes 400 that interest me are somewhat mundane, kind of run-of-the-mill, everyday products that people don't think of. But these companies have really differentiated themselves on their service. So, Chick-fil-A would be at the top of the list, but, other names that, are maybe used a little less frequently, Discount Tire, Drury Hotels. And what really interests me is, kind of diving in, looking at those companies to see what differentiates them. And the big things are, the culture of ownership and the culture of teamwork. work. We're there as a team. We're there to serve the patients. We're cognizant of the experience that we're delivering, and we've designed our systems and processes and staffing and everything around getting the patient what they want. And I just said what the patient wants in urgent care. They want to be in and out quickly, and they want to have their medical issue solved.
Well, and so you thought, yeah, because you mentioned team and culture and all the things around that. Because, I know when some listeners, when they hear don't be rude, they're thinking about the provider. Like, no, the provider is one of many people they interact with. And like, because we talk about the importance of a front desk and all those things, but like, chances are when a patient walks into that lobby, there's probably 4 to 5 interactions they're going to have minimum to get through that process. And like, there's an opportunity to be rude at every one of them. Right. And it can sour an experience, even if the nurse practitioner did an amazing job, but the person checking them out was just straight up mean. And so like all those things, and like you said, it goes back to culture. This is a team effort. This isn't a one person that's going to solve all the problems type situation. Like, it takes everybody to get that great experience.
That's right.
To actually happen.
Yeah. And I've looked at Google reviews in aggregate, done keyword analysis on that, and far away, there are 2 top complaints. Some, you talk to providers and they'll say, well, they give us low reviews because we won't give them the drugs they want. It's like, no, it's wait time, number 1, and then the R word, rude, and that's so subjective. I mean, it's like, the front desk was rude. What exactly does that mean? But key to success is understanding the patient's perception and understanding what that means to the patient and not doing it. With that, treat the patients well, get them in and out quickly, meet their needs. And I really summarize that in 3 guiding principles. Key to success in urgent care: no wait, no waste, no hassle. No wait for the patient.
That's good.
Yeah, no waste, running an efficient operation, a lean operation, wasting resources, wasting time, so no wait, no waste, and then no hassle for the patient.
I love it.
That's actually a great way to end that too. That's
so you take it out.
That's so simple, right? No wait, no waste, no hassle. And that becomes like the 3 checks. If we're making a change in this urgent care, let's check off these 3 boxes. Does it apply, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, then should we make the change? Like, that should be as simple as 1, 2, 3.
Guardrails.
Yeah, really. Yeah. It's just guardrails for your business. Yeah. That's kind of fantastic. I love it. So,
well, take us out, man.
Well, Alan, thank you again for coming on. It's been a long time coming. I know a lot of scheduling here and there, but your knowledge is just incredible for the urgent care space. Yeah, for sure. We're going to have some follow-up episodes with you for sure, because there's more to break down here. I mean, we really only touched on 3 or 4 items, and there's more that we can break apart. And an audience, please give us your feedback. What question do you want to ask Alan? Like, what is it? And we can bring him back on and discuss.
We'll find some weird way to get into his calendar, because he's busiest guy.
Yeah, he's so busy.
Alan, if somebody wants to connect with you, they want to start an urgent care, they're in the throes of it, they may not even know where to start, or maybe they've secured their funding, they just need to know where to go from here. What's the best way for them to connect with you directly?
Yeah, so I would say visit our website, urgentcareconsultants.com. There's a contact us form. Visit the website, check it out, check out the content, and hit contact us, and we'll be back in touch, schedule a discovery call.
Awesome. We'll drop that information down in the show notes, but I want to thank you personally for coming on. I know we've had several interactions over the past couple of weeks. We have a webinar that you're going to be leading, and we're going to be interacting on that as well.
Yep.
To get these clinics through the summer slowdowns. So I'm excited to be a part of that with you. Thank you for coming on, and we will see you on the next episode.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time, and look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Alan.
See you.
All right.